Well, look, I want to go back now to the fire at a synagogue in Melbourne today. And for more on this, I'm joined by Joel Burnie from the Australia, Israel and Jewish Affairs Council. Joel, thank you so much for joining me. Firstly, what is your reaction to what has occurred here?
Thanks for having me on, Danica. Well, I've got to express a number of different emotions today, from sadness, anger, frustration, disgust at this appalling act. But the one thing that I tell you that I'm not, and the rest of the Jewish community is not, is surprised. These attacks and the spike in antisemitism that has been witnessed from the Australian Jewish community since just hours after October 7 has just been appalling. It's been increasing day after day, week after week, of gross inaction. An ineptitude and lack of leadership has put us in this place now where I fear that things are only going to get worse, and we all know what that next step is. We've got people that were firebombed inside a house of worship, inside a synagogue. There were people inside of it. It's got to this stage now where I fear that blood needs to be spilled, someone needs to die before the government does something. So I feel a lot of things today. I feel a lot of things for my community. Whilst I'm fearful for everyone here, including my own children who go to Jewish installations on a daily basis at their school and at their kinder, which have been targeted over the past 14 months. We are a resilient and resolute community. We'll stick together. We'll get through this together. But what we do need is that we need Australia. This is against Australian values. This is not something that we expect in our great, thriving, multicultural society. This is not the social cohesion that we, as all proud Australians, are used to. And I think it's high time that the Australian general public pushes back at this appalling act.
Absolutely. You know, we are a tolerant society, but that tolerance was fractured after October 7, 2023. And, you know, you mentioned about we need leadership. We've been crying out for leadership on this, but how much of this falls at the feet of the state and federal governments? And do you personally, as a member of the Jewish community, do you feel betrayed?
Well, it's hard not to see that there's some type of responsibility from what we perceive in the community as lack of enforcement from the policing agencies, as well as lack of leadership from both the state and federal governments. And the reason for that is that because this has been sequential. We've been speaking about this exhaustively for 14 months. We had the scenes on the Opera House, no less than 48 hours from the massacre itself, with very little action, to the point that New South Wales police some months later said, well, they said, where's the Jews as opposed to gas the Jews? So what are we supposed to do here? We had an attack 13 months ago at another synagogue in Melbourne. No arrests made from that attack, where a synagogue was in lockdown. We've had the largest Jewish school vandalized with Jew die on it. And again, we've had Jewish members of parliament, including Josh Burns' office, firebombed. Attacks on other MPs, including Peter Khalil, with a noxious toxin. This is just insane. This has gone way out of hand. It's not up to the citizens of Australia to have to rise up and to protect other minorities. It's up to the police force, and ultimately it's up to governments, both at the state and federal level, to protect minorities like the Jewish community. And as it's progressively got worse, where we're now at a stage where we're arguably, and probably with more information to come to light, have a domestic terrorism event on our hands, because of that progression and because of the lack of leadership and the lack of progress on this, I think that the conclusion is pretty clear.
Look, we're almost out of time, but I just want to get your reaction to the comments made overnight by the office of Benjamin Netanyahu, criticising the Albanese government over its retreating support for Israel, of course, in the promotion of a Palestinian statehood at the UN. Where does this leave Australia and Israel now? They've always been key allies, but has this relationship changed?
So let me remind all the viewers that Anthony Albanese came into government promising that the long-standing bipartisan relationship with Israel would continue. And that certainly is not the case. Whether or not he lied or whether or not he's just changed course during his tenure, either way, that statement is now resoundingly false and not accurate. Where this leaves the relationship, it's important to note that not only is our relationship built on mutual interest, but it's deeply within Australia's strategic interest to have a strong relationship with Israel. Regardless of what other countries have done and how other countries vote, and whether or not Australia can hide behind other like-minded countries in the justification of its poor acts against an ally, The relationship is now in tatters. And unfortunately, it's the Australian people that will suffer due to the very strong strategic relationship that we've had for the past 76 years that is now in great jeopardy because of the identity politics of this government that's seemingly placing votes in Western Sydney above the protection of Jewish people, as well as its long-standing relationship with Israel.
Yep, selling out our values for votes. It's just disgusting. Joel Burnie, good to have you on. Thank you very much for joining us on the show this evening.